All right, you want a break? You want me to break?
I don't know how to break. You break. I don't play pool.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah.
well.
You shook my confidence. I missed that.
I'm so glad.
You remember the Master Chief? You wrote the 5-page
Well, I
letter?
didn't meet him personally.
Yeah.
See, the Master Chief was just this figurehead. And I asked Captain Lucas, head of the hospital, I want to do this thing. He said, well, here's what you have to do. You have to write a letter to the Master Chief of the Navy. If he approves it, I'm behind it. And I went, Master Chief of the Navy? Oh, God. So I wrote the best BS letter I've ever seen. I said,
me too.
It's not a job, it's an adventure, is the advertising campaign. What if two young, strapping sailors that race bicycles could ride across the country from Coos Bay, Oregon to Charleston, South Carolina in 30 days? Wouldn't that make a good impression on the campaign? And damn if it didn't. I get a letter back from the Master Chief of the Navy saying it's a go. I about dropped my teeth.
I know.
Yeah.
And we're off.
And we're off. Yeah.
At that point, I was riding quite a bit, but once we got the letter back saying we were approved for 30 days of leave, which is what we got, we had to figure out how to do it in 30 days. And so we were training, 6 days a week, riding 100 miles on a weekend. And then we were setting up, trying to figure out how many pounds we could take. Everything we were taking was on our bike, on either front panniers or rear panniers. Canvas bag you put on the front wheels and the back wheels, one on each side, that you carry all your gear with.
And you remember how we used to pack those? You put the front, all the tools, the two stoves, you put them on the front panniers in low.
Yeah.
And then you pack all your lighter stuff on the back, because 60% of your weight's on the back tire of that bicycle.
Yeah, but this thing rode like a Cadillac when we got it done. It was like gliding down the road.
And do you remember that we could stand up? Once we got used to them and we were really strong in the middle of the ride, we could stretch our backs. You remember? Stand up on the pedals. It was so stable. You just lean back, because when you're bent over like this all day, you got to do this.
Yeah.
And it was so amazing. It was like a Cadillac. It kept you going the way you wanted to go.
Yeah.
And bicycle wheels are just big gyroscopes. And that's what lets you lean into those curves. But when you put panniers on there with good weight, balanced equally right and left, it made it a different bike. Now, it was 50 pounds of biking gear.
Well, it made a lot of fun going down the hill. Coming down in Colorado is just fantastic, because you're doing 55, 60, and it's really stable. Going up the same side sucked, because you're pulling 50 pounds more gear up that hill.
Luckily, I did a lot of the training in Austin. In Austin, they don't do switchbacks. If there's a tall hill, it's short. You got to go straight up that grade and get over it. So luckily, I had been training in Austin for 4 years before we ever did the ride. And then when we were in the Navy down in Corpus Christi, remember what we did to do hill climbing?
Yeah, climb the bridges.
We climbed the bridges over the coastal canal. Do you remember the time we were out riding? And this is really fun. Rod Frack, another pharmacy tech, was with me for the first time and trying to hang on to us. We let him hang on to us. You remember those girls in that VW that came by and mooned us? Rod was such a conservative guy. It freaked him out.
Well, I remember us, we were probably into the wind, I think, struggling to do 15 miles an hour or something, and they came by and mooned us, and suddenly our speed picked up to 20. We were trying to catch up with them. Of course, we never did.
Well, anyway, that's just the beginning, but we did a lot of training. However, you can't train for a cross-country bicycle trip. Until you're riding with 50 pounds of biking gear, nothing is the same. We trained without panniers.
Yeah.
We got on the ride, and it was like within a few days, we were 3 days into it, both of us were looking at each other going, hey, man, this is pretty hard.
Yeah. How are we going to get out of this?
How are we going to get out of it?
Yes. One of us has to get hurt. And we can't want to hurt ourselves really bad. It's just going to be a nagging knee injury or a little bit of back injury or something to because when we left, Captain Lucas and the staff gave us a big cake and a send-off, and we're going to call back every 2 or 3
and
days.
they kept a map. They kept a map
in the hospital.
In the hospital, and every day that we called in, they put a new pin in and watched our progress. So when we were so tired, it was probably 4 or 5 days of just misery, and you just got to get used to it. Anyway, bottom line is that during that time, remember I got the eye infection from all those gnats?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a pharmacist, pharmacy tech guy. I ran the pharmacy in Corpus Christi. I know I need isoptocetapred eye drops, or I'm going to have to quit this trip, because you can't ruin your eyes just trying to ride across the country. And we rode into Boise, and we went downtown into Boise. Not our plan. We were going to go around because we're trying to get across the country in 30 days. I went to a pharmacy and I begged, hey man, I'm a pharmacy tech down and we're riding across the country for the Navy. I've got serious eye infection. Could I get some isoptocetapred? And he said no. And then we went to another pharmacy, and that guy had pity on us, and he gave us those eye drops. And without those eye drops, I would have had to drop out of that race.
It would have been a lonely ride for me.
Yeah.
So I think that's how we met, somewhere in either the hospital or a cafeteria or something. And then we moved into Admiral Perry. And I'd never ridden bicycles except around the neighborhood. And so met you and you riding. I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. And I know we had this discussion of, do you get a good bike or you get a cheap bike to see if you like it? Or you get a good bike, and if you get a good bike, you don't like it, at least sell it for something. So we went down to the bike store there in Corpus, and lo and behold, they had a Paramount, which is a Swim Paramount, which is a great, at that point, racing bike with Colnago. And
it was one of the best bikes you could buy at the time. And remember, it had dust on it?
Yeah, it'd been sitting there forever.
It'd been sitting there forever. And see, I ran that bicycle shop for 4 years when I was at UT, okay? And I knew prices. And I said, let's negotiate. What did you end up getting that bike for?
I think I paid $550 for it. That's the bike right there. It's been repainted by Paramount, but that's the bike that we did the cross country on in '78.
When you first started riding, I don't know if you remember this, I told you don't ride very far. You got to get your seat bones in shape. And what did you do first time you got on that bike?
I rode. So first time I got on the bike, I was feeling really good. And I think I rode I can't remember whether I rode over the bridge and back or just to the bridge and back, but it was 20 miles, which felt pretty good till the next day when I tried to set. And I was setting on one side and the other side, and it took me 2 or 3 days to get the soreness gone.
I thought you couldn't even sit at all.
Well, I could lean on one side or the other.
I just remember, the old cyclist. I'd already done a 4,000-mile bicycle trip up in Canada. Did you listen to me?
No, of course not. I felt too good.
Yeah.
So, and plus, on the way out, or I can't remember whether we had a headwind on the way out toward Padre Island and tailwind on the way back. So going out was harder, but coming back seemed pretty nice.
Well, that's why you always do training rides. The reason you go into the headwind is that it works you hard, but in your mind, you're going to get that blow coming back. And people that don't cycle seriously, they have no idea. It's not the hills that bother you. It's the wind. If you go into a wind all day, you'll ride 60 miles and feel like you rode 120. Any questions? Any questions?
Better be lucky than good.
That's what I always say.
Yeah, so they gave us 30 days of additional leave to do this. So we were still active duty Navy, still had to come back and work. We got done. But instead of having to use our own 30 days of leave, he gave us an additional 30 days of leave, which is just paid vacation for civilians, to go do this thing. But the catch was we had 30 days. If we were 30 days and we wound up in Kentucky, we were screwed. We had to be back on base or we were going to be AWOL because we had 30 days to do it.
Yeah, and think about it, 3,400 miles in 30 days. We got to average 130 miles a day.
Yeah.
And I'd done centuries before, but not century after century after century with 50 pounds of biking gear.
Yeah, it's like doing a marathon every day for, I think we did 26 days.
26 days, yeah.
So you remember when we left Eugene and rode through, I'd always envisioned Oregon as being this lush state all the way across, and we came across the Cascades over whatever that pass was that we had to detour to, and then we went up in this high desert plains of just nothing. I mean, I remember, if you look at the map I had over here, once we got over somewhere in here, we went into Ben and Brothers and went up in Sisters, and from there on, I think we had 3 towns and 110 miles or so, somewhere up through here. And then we wound up in Boise where you had the eye infection. And it's just riding down through Idaho, which just, again, high desert and hot. And, or we thought it was hot until we got over in Tennessee. And then rode down into, I think in Idaho is where we came across that pass, and we stopped at a place called Wilson's Store to get groceries. And we were always trying to figure out where we were going to spend the night. We had to get groceries somewhere and then ride to where our campsite was. We got to our campsite and realized I left my sunglasses. And somehow of course there weren't cell phones back then, so he called Wilson's Market and said, "Can you ship these glasses?" And 20 minutes later, the people who owned the store drove up and brought my glasses. And that's just the coolest thing. And to me, that's kind of one of the recurring themes on the ride is
the people.
We had so many people that did nice things for us, just random acts of kindness.
Yep.
In fact, in Idaho, somewhere down before we wound up into Utah, we were riding down that long stretch of road, hot and windy, and it's divided highway, and that lady, we see a car come up behind us, and she said, "I saw you, I was going the other way, I was going north, saw you guys looking hot," turned around, and she had a cooler of fresh, I guess, I think it's Pepsi's or soft drinks or something.
Yeah, I remember.
It was the best thing I ever had. And she gave us 2 or 3 Pepsi's and turned around and went back, and it's just another angel on our trip.
People were really inspired because we were doing this thing, and they responded to the energy that we were putting out. Do you remember what happened that day outside of Boise? I bet you don't. Let me tell you. So we didn't want to go into downtown Boise. We did not. But I had to go there to get the eye drops so I could continue the ride. Well, the wind was blowing at our back. And in that area, there are plateaus. They go up, they go down. And the wind was blowing probably 30 miles an hour. We made 170 something miles that one day.
Yeah.
Just because we could sit up on our bikes and hold up our jerseys, and it was like a sail.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. You go down, then you have to get back up. But once you're on top, I swear it was just easy pedaling. And that was our longest day.
Yeah.
170 something miles.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. And then I remember for days, I remember when my parents met us in Missouri or Kansas, they took all 4 of our panniers off each of our bikes. And so it's just us and the bikes, and we pick up the bikes like, oh my God, this is like a feather. And so I think we did 160 miles each one of those days and stopped at 3:00 in the afternoon. Jumped, they had a swimming pool where we were staying.
The motel.
Yeah, the motel.
The second time we stayed at a motel the entire ride.
It was heaven.
We got a good meal, because here's something that a lot of people don't know. If you're riding, first of all, there's no toilets, okay? You pee and poop where you can. And when we were riding, we always tried to find a breakfast place within 30 minutes after our camping site, because there's a bathroom there. You can get a good meal in the morning. We fixed every one of our other meals, and lots of coffee.
Yeah.
And
But you remember that brings a good point, because when we started off, we weren't sure what we were going to eat, but we were thinking ramen noodles, something easy, because we took a little camp stove.
we had 2 Savea sour camp stoves.
And
Yes.
cooked our meals every night, and we tried ramen noodles and other stuff. And I can't remember, it was the 3rd or 4th day we finally decided, all right, we got a 16-ounce package of spaghetti, ragu sauce,
Quart of ragu.
half gallon of milk, a whole pack of Oreo cookies, and a small thing of Parmesan cheese, and that was it for the next 23 days. That was
Every night.
Oh, it was so good. We rolled into bed, and I couldn't even roll on my side because I was so full. But the next morning, you woke up and just starving.
We had to eat about 4,000 to 5,000 calories every day just so we could keep going. And that we had 2 stoves. One of us would cook the noodles, the spaghetti noodles, and the other one would warm up the ragu. And that just became our regular deal because there's lots of calories in that kind of meal.
Yeah.
And literally, we split a big pack of, amazing. Those cookies got us through this trip.
Oh, yeah. Well, that and Pepsi's.
Yeah, I remember.
Well,
yes.
I remember, and the other thing, we'd like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, we'd have Pepsi's and get those packs of cinnamon rolls, the sticky stuff on top.
Oh, yeah.
It's like stopping and filling up the car. You down 2 Pepsis, have a half pack of those, and you're like, I'm ready to take off again.
Yeah, because it was really hard to just you had to keep a pace up. Yeah, all the time. We traded off being in front, letting the other person draft, being in back, being in front. And you take 15 to 20% of the effort off the guy that's drafting when you do that. So we continually shifted who was in the lead of our group.
Yeah.
And, that's just what you do when you're racing bicycles. So that's what we did.